Welcome to this special episode of the Game Plan Coaching Podcast, which is a compilation of all of the game-changing advice our fantastic guests have shared with us throughout Series 1. I have absolutely loved recording these episodes, learned so much from the guests who I've worked with, and can't wait to record some more and connect with some brilliant coaches across different sports around the world. A huge thank you to the guests who have been part of this series: Martin Dighton, Richard Cheetham, Fran, Wally, Tom Coyd, Liam Gilbert, Nicky Harverson, Daniel Lysett, Mark Blundell, Joe Baker, Paul Bowden, John Hendry, Bobby Scales, Jean Cote, Russ Smith, and Stuart Armstrong. We hear from all of them in this best of episode where they all share their game-changing advice for coaching. In the show notes, there's a link to a survey that is open at the moment for any listeners to share feedback on the podcast, things they like, would like to change, would like more of, would like less of. So if you have a spare 2 minutes and are able to complete the survey, I would love that so we can continue to improve the podcast for Series 2. Thanks again for listening. Thanks again for being part of the Game Plan Coaching Podcast, and enjoy this special episode.
Stop coaching. Okay, now by that, I mean, in your next coaching session, just stop for a little bit. And there's a couple of reasons I'm asking you to just stop. Now, I'm using the term coaching in a quite a traditional sense, that I'm imagining coaching being we're constantly on, we're giving information, we're asking questions, we're bouncing around, changing practice design. I'm asking coaches to just stop. Maybe pause would be a better word. Just pause for a bit. Because I've noticed in myself, as I've just talked to with the audio recordings, but as I noticed in a lot of other coaches I've worked with over the years, there's this idea, this almost societal pressure that we've got to be coaching, and I'm using the speech marks thing, coaching all the time. That we've got to constantly be giving instructions, asking questions, offering support, advice, guidance, praise, and all the rest of it. But I think when we're on all the time, we miss so much stuff. So I'm encouraging coaches out there to just stop. In your next training session, just take a couple of minutes to just watch and listen. And it's for a couple of reasons. One, it's for our own sanity as coaches. I don't know if we can actually be that effective if we're on that much for that long under that pressure. Secondly, it's about helping our participants, athletes, players, whatever they are in your language, your context. It's only when we truly stop, watch and listen that we can actually truly help. And I've just been amazed myself over the years of when I've done this, and now it's part of my habits now, just what you see that you didn't otherwise, the little nuances, the little, the young child who does something you didn't know they could do, or someone taking a lead that they just wouldn't have done because the environment would have been filled with my own noise.
Game-changing piece of advice, not probably for me, is always that think about those you coach primarily before what you coach. So these are people in front of me who come with just a whole variety of experiences, anxieties, abilities, backgrounds, journeys, and just think about those people before you think about what you're coaching. I spend a lot of time in the first few weeks of term with a new group, in the times with those I coach and those coaches I work with, just wanting to know who is my audience. Because that is the most important thing. That gives rise to your ability to be intuitive about what they need as a group, as an individual, as what's appropriate. Because if I'm working with coaches, what's important is I understand their context, where they're going back to. So they won't be going back to a beautiful AstroTurf that's 10 by 10 on a beautiful sunny day with all the equipment, with 24 people who can, they'll have a whole variety. So
what I would like to talk about is the importance of honesty with your athletes and trust being a two-way street. So as coaches, we know that knowing what our athlete is really thinking, what they're feeling, whether that's about their confidence, how fatigued they are, have they got any injuries, if they've got any doubts about what they're doing, or, what their level of understanding is. We need that honest information, or we can't do our jobs to their full effect. And without the openness, it's really easy to miss what's going on, and you might not be leading them down the right path or doing the right training or communicating with them in the most effective way. But equally, athletes need honesty from us. So they need feedback that's not sugar-coated. They need us to have difficult conversations with them to role model that behavior of honesty.
So my biggest learning, my biggest game changer is ensuring that between you and your players, there's connection and clarity. Because when I think about the 2021 World Cup, our coaching strategy in terms of how we set up the team was effectively to just pick the best 5 players and give them some things that we wanted them to go out there and execute, but basically pick the best 5 players and get them on the pitch, make sure that they filled the space on there, and just let them go out there and do their thing, which of course has its own pros and cons. But we paid little attention to the individual traits of those players, both athletically and tactically, but also personality-wise, and what sort of energy are they going to bring to the group. And the way that that's evolved over the last few years is to be a lot more conscious around, okay, how do these personalities, as we understand them, combine to make that team performance on the pitch? And basically constantly asking ourselves, as the game moves through phases like team invasion games do we want to build? Do we need to chase? Do we need to steady? And what mix of player traits do we need to hopefully put ourselves in the best spot to do that? And in order to have that clarity, the connection is absolutely paramount. To understand who those players are as people, what it is that makes them tick, why do they play the game, what do they love about it, what games am I likely to play more of a prominent role in, and when it gets to crunch time, like semi-finals and finals, what realistic chance do I have of being able to feature on the pitch at the time where we're playing to win the whole tournament? And I think what I struggled with at the time was not wanting to put a ceiling on people, and not wanting to limit their own beliefs, constrain their confidence of what they could do at a World Cup. Because if somebody got injured who was a more prominent player than them, then we would need that other person to step up. And I would have hated for me to have gone into the tournament saying, we need you to be a squad player, there's a good chance you won't play much, and then all of a sudden they're thrust into a much more prominent role. And I think that to me is one of the times where it's absolutely the art of coaching and not the science, and having the tact to communicate with people and understanding how much of their self-worth you sometimes have in your hands as a coach, because they would put a lot of their identity in how well they're getting on in the sport that they love.
One of the biggest things I've learned, and I'm continuing to learn, is that as much as we're all driven by results, right? You can be fired, you can be promoted based on your results, but everything's people first. If you've got a team of people that will play for you and will pull for you, that will go a lot further than a team of over-talented players that just turn up. So I feel like the more I'm going on my journey, it's how to create lasting relationships with players, but making sure that it stays driven towards what your objectives are or what your target is, and it's then taking a step back to implement to make sure we maximize what we've got. And you don't go so far that you're just doing things to appease people. You're setting out structures, processes that you believe or that will get the results you want, but it's making sure you've got people that will pull in the direction you need them to pull in. You can have someone with all the talent in the world, but if they don't believe in what you're doing, or they don't believe in you or what you stand for, then are they going to do what you want them to do when push comes to shove?
There are two things for me, but they both come down to recording myself coaching and hearing myself back, that playback of what I say when I'm on the park. And more importantly, it isn't just what I say, it's how I say it, whether that's pitch, volume, references. But what that's led me to is actually recording a voice note for my sessions for my other coaches, so they know what's in my head when I go to the park and I'm co-coaching. But also, I listen to that back myself several times so that I know what the intonation of my voice is telling me about the way I want to be as a coach. And the recording bit is the important part. And it's not because I don't like writing things down, but actually when I hear myself back, I can see how energetic, enthusiastic, fed up, disillusioned I might be when I'm recording myself and when I hear myself back. And so I would encourage any coach to record themselves. And it could be as simple as recording your session so you know what energy you want to evoke before you go. That's a really good starter because it's a really nice, safe space to be in to start with if you're not used to hearing yourself. But then do progress to putting yourself, recording yourself when you coach and then hearing yourself back and then working on those little things that say, oh, okay, so I say that a lot. Wow, my voice is really high pitched at that point. What am I trying to get across? And where was that in the session? And I'm like, okay, I was getting really excited at that point. How do I learn from that? And it's not whether I have to change it. It's what am I learning about my coaching that will help me to improve who I'm becoming as a coach later on.
I suppose podcasts are great, but also reach out to those people who are listening to them or on them as well. I think a lot of people are willing, like literally anyone messages me on LinkedIn, I'll talk to them. Not because I don't have any friends, because some people do like me. But mainly because I think we don't get a lot of time, and I would really like other people's experiences to be positive, and I think a lot of people want to do that better. And I would say reach out. I've done it with other people before. I've said I'm more than happy to talk to people. But one thing I would definitely say, practically start young. Don't try and drop this stuff into an older age group. If I was to go back to my first schools, I would start in year 7 and I would build a culture of this. So by the time they get to sixth form, this is just how you do this in this school. Because whenever we get new students in, which you do in independent schools, it can be a bit of a key change when they're almost a bit, oh, this is way different. Where's the lines? Aren't you supposed to tell me what to do? Where's the technique here? And my question is, did the ball get where you wanted it to? Yeah, I'm more than happy. More than happy.
The power of data and information. I think coaches have access to more information than they've ever had before. I would encourage them to not use that information in a predictive way, to try to think about it. How can I use this for measuring an athlete's talent? I would say use it in a diagnostic way. Like, what can this tell me about the kinds of environments I need to provide for my athletes so that they continue to develop? Where are their strengths? Where are their weaknesses? And how do I use that to improve the quality of the coaching that I give them, as opposed to thinking about them as variables in an equation? How can I use this information to design better learning and training environments?
I think more than anything, I think if you're on the other side of the coin, and if it's from a coaching perspective or a mentoring perspective, I think it's actually, we talked about self-belief, but it's actually also having belief in the individual that you are supporting. I think you have to be authentic with it. And I think if you don't have that engagement and that belief that you feel that they are the real deal, then you're doing yourself a disservice, and you're doing a disservice to the person that you are coaching or looking after. So if I look at a driver and I don't sort of see the glint in their eye and I don't think they can get the job done, my enthusiasm is not at the levels where it should be. And that means I'm not going to give the best support I can. So I think it's just being wholeheartedly honest with you and the other side of the coin to say, look, this is not a good match. And that actually takes quite a lot to achieve and get done. And it also, especially when you're in the world of business, sometimes it's very difficult to say no. But sometimes it's the right answer.
Well, I think always challenge yourself as well. You know, or try and be better yourself. Try and learn from the sessions, learn from your players, what they are and what they're not capable of. Don't over expect too much from players, but be pleased and excited when they do things that you perhaps didn't think they were quite capable of. Keep encouraging, keep exposing them to more challenges, challenge the players to different environments, different opposition, but keep learning about yourself as well as the players, and never stop learning and watching, but always be thoughtful that it's the players who are the beneficiaries of what you're doing. Don't try and jump up the ladder as a coach too early. Learn the groundwork, but learn about the players and enjoy working over a period of time to get the best out of the group of players that you're working with.
Great.
You are a coach, but you need coaching, right? Like, so don't neglect yourself. What you are doing as a coach and as a professional. I always used to say this when I was running the system, right? Our players will be as good as our worst coach. So if you are not on a journey to improve yourself each and every day, I'll be very frank and direct here. If you weren't on a journey to be better each and every day, I didn't want you in our system, because you have to figure out a way to get better, because you're going to have new players that come in with new bits of technology that they had from their previous stops, or you have to figure out better ways to reach their players, whether it be I used to recommend if you're a coach and you've never sold something, I would recommend sales books, because you're selling ideas. There's going to be a time where your player may be enjoying some success, but there's a fatal flaw in what they're doing. The body moves this way or the body moves that way, and you've got to convince them to take a step back, to take 2 or 3 forward. You've got to sell that idea. You may have an idea. You may be an executive, and you may want to pitch something upstairs to your higher ups, but you need an extra $1 million to do it. You've got to put together a proposal and sell them on why it's going to help us develop players, right? So it's the constant quest of getting better. Whatever your area of weakness is, don't run from it, run right to it, and find a way to make yourself better each and every day.
Yeah, maybe coaches should reflect about short-term athlete development. We talk a lot about long-term athlete development, but what does it look in the short term? And I think we design we design sports systems that are really based on developing athletes in terms of sport-specific skills and what we want to achieve, but what do we want to achieve on a daily basis? What do we want to achieve on a weekly basis? And I would think that if coaches do a good job on a weekly basis, then on a monthly basis, it's going to happen. And on a season, there's going to be increase of outcome. There's going to be, and we don't even have to think about long term, because it's going to happen by itself. So thinking a little bit more short term could be a good idea for coaches. The one thing I think that coaches have to realize too is that sport is one of the best activity for the development of people, for the development of citizens, of people that will contribute back and make an impact on society. So every behavior that we do every week how do you contribute to athletes' confidence and athletes' relationship with others and athletes' character in terms of compassion and integrity and playing within the rules. There's a lot of people right now, especially right now in the world, that, don't play within the rules, and they're not good role models for kids. But I think within sport, we have an activity that is challenging, that is enjoyable, that is fun for the kids. There's less than 1% of those kids that will make a living out of sport. So how do we build a sport system where we know we're going to develop people and that those people will go to society and will make a contribution? It doesn't have to be in sport. It could be in sport, but will make a contribution in other ways and help others. So I think that's, as coaches, need to think about this a little bit. This is not just about sport and about sport specifics, about how to shoot a basketball or how to make a pass or how to do a flip, but it's a lot about the development of people.
Right, I'm going to give you a couple. Number one, analysis. I'm not saying you need £1,000 camera. I'm not saying you need all the fancy technology, but I'm pretty sure the better you involve your stakeholders, just to keep a little tally of how many times we've done X, Y, or Z, that can then help you out with some insight to when you might have your coaching moments, team talks, etc., etc. Now, the reason why I say this is I'm a firm believer in the better you work with your stakeholders, the better outcomes you get. And often the ones who are most vocal, it's probably because they used to play, or I watched it on the telly, or they think they could do better than you. So if you involve them in the analysis side, post-it note, tally, they're less likely to try and get you the sack in your volunteer role. They're more likely to be a part of your coaching team to help you out with what you're trying to do. So that's my first tip. Secondly, my second bit of advice will be, dependent on where you stand will be where you can coach. So what I mean by that is, everything looks different dependent on your positioning. So if I want to influence and improve the end goal of an invasion game, which is a shot, a throw or a basket, whatever, I can't really see what my players see. Now, I can't become a player because last time I checked, I don't fit the under-14s category, but sometimes might need some perspective on that. Now, whether that might be that your players give you the feedback, or if you have some non-starters or some people who are rotating or whatever, just that little view elsewhere can really give you a different picture. And in most traditional sports, we stand at the side. So where my hand would be the pitch or the court or whatever, and we would traditionally stand here. That doesn't really give us a good overview of what your players see. So even if that's an angle view, or even if that's one of your others, or sometimes there's rules that you can't stand here, right? But that different viewpoint can really see it differently, because we might say spread out because we stood here and I can only see the heads of 15 kids. But if I stand there, I might not see that. I might see that there's space, but it's more on the left. So it might just help you to inform more technical or tactical decisions based around what you are observing.
So I saw something this morning, actually. It was all about Marcelo Bielsa, who I followed for a long time and quite an admirer of. Certain aspects of the way he operates that maybe not as positive necessarily, but there's a certain, what's the word? There's almost there's some conflicts, actually, in some of the things that he does that are interesting. But one of the things he talked about was he saw there was certain footballers who were geniuses, like the Pelés and Maradonas and Messis and these sorts. But they were very few and far between. And the vast majority of footballers could never be them, but they could imitate them. So he had this idea that he was going to put in place an environment where he would give people the best opportunity to imitate their genius. Now, I actually think that's poor language, and it might actually be part of translation. I prefer to think of it in a slightly different way, which is, how do we create an environment where people can become the best versions of themselves, that therefore means that they can self-actualize they may not have the gifts of others, but if they take their own gifts and maximize them, what can they do? And if you take Bielsa's time at Leeds United, where he sort of got them from, kind of languishing in the second division down up to the Premier League and then being a competitive force in the Premier League, really quite shocking to quite a lot of teams. What that was a story of was taking players who weren't necessarily superstars and helping them collectively and individually self-actualize and maximize their gifts or maximize their capabilities. He did it in some strange ways, but one of the ways he did it, and this is the takeaway for everybody. So firstly, it was this idea of the goal is to help people imitate greatness. His language, not my language, but you see what I'm trying to say. But the way he did that was interesting. And he said that sometimes people would just play a lot of five-a-sides and this, that, and the other. He never did that with this group, right? And this is where this whole idea of the game being the teacher is a misnomer. And I think some coaches have gone down that road of, we're just going to play games, just play games because the game will be the teacher. You have to be more intentional than that, way more intentional than that. And this is where things like the constraints-led approach give us an approach. What he did was he broke down the game through hours and hours and hours and hours of video footage into particular moments and particular actions that people might take that would give them an advantage in a scenario. And then he designed what he called exercises. Now, his were unopposed. Mine would be more opposed because I'd want to maintain fidelity with the environment as much as possible. But he would design exercises where people could spend time familiarizing themselves, remember that word, with these scenarios so that when they appeared in the game, there was a way for them to navigate through those scenarios. And so the takeaway here for coaches is think through those moments. Think through those key things in the game, take a slice of the game out and design practice environments that enable people to familiarize themselves with those slices before you then place them back into the game. But be intentional about it and think about how you can maintain as much of the elements of the game as you can within the boundaries of numbers and time and space and all those sorts of things.
Give for, so forgive, because they'll make mistakes. Give themselves a break. Don't be too hard on yourself as a coach, because you'll stuff up, you'll make mistakes, you'll misjudge. Be kind to yourself, be kind to the person you're coaching, and by being kind, you're really developing a relationship. But most importantly, when they don't achieve what they want to achieve, or they don't achieve what you want them to achieve, give them a break, forgive them. And if they know that, all of a sudden, they will engage at a level that it will enable you to coach them. If you don't forgive, they will not engage at a level, and you will feel that you're not making ground. So forgiveness, to me, is the primary purpose in coaching.
Thanks for listening to the Game Plan Coaching Podcast. If you enjoyed the episode, please follow the show and share it with a coach who might find it useful. I'd love to hear your feedback and any ideas you have for future guests. You can get in touch through the links in the show notes. Thanks again for listening, and go well in your next coaching session.